Welcome to Ron's Computer Videos. It's DOScember, and you know what that means. It means it's that special time of year where you try to shoehorn in a video that you've been working on for 6 months into a PC-themed video month. So what I've got here is a Apple DOS compatibility card. This is specifically like the Houdini 2. This is the second version that came out. Let's cut back to the footage that I shot probably, 6 months ago, and let's see what old Ron has to say. Now this is a little bit different because this is not my original card. This isn't my original Power Mac 6100. This is not my beautiful house. This is not my beautiful wife. How did I get here? This is stuff that I've collected over the last couple of years to try to recreate kind of a cool machine that I had way back in the day. I had a Quadra 610, which was a fun machine, and then later, I think I got that kind of in mid-1993, and then in early 1994, Apple released a DOS card for the Quadra 610, and I always thought, wow, that was really, really cool. A 486 running at 25 megahertz. I could play some cool DOS games. So for $3.99, I worked all summer and saved up a little bit of cash, and was able to, kind of in mid-2004, after the DOS cards were released, to pick one of those up. And I installed it, and man, I thought that was just like the best thing ever, because you could play Commander Keen, you could play Jill of the Jungle, you could play all these great kind of DOS titles and stuff, and it was a lot of fun. It had some failings though. One of those failings was you did not have PC compatible sound unless Sound Blaster or kind of anything better than a PC speaker. That really was kind of a bummer, but it was still fun to do some of those things. So the $3.99 price tag, when you thought about the cost of either building a PC or something, or having to come up with hard drives and everything like that, it was a steal for somebody in my situation. So I picked one up, and man, I had a lot of fun with that thing. But one of the kind of the failings, I think, of that card is the 25 megahertz 486 chip. Because even when that came out, that was kind of a dog. And there were DOS games that just did not play well with it. Clock speed, that's one issue. And the other issue is it was an SX, so it had no math coprocessor. So it was basically the speed of like a 386 DX chip, like a whole generation of technology earlier. So there were games that just would not play, just wouldn't play right. So something you could do on those early cards is you could get a Intel clock doubled CPU. So something like a 46. Oh, and the other thing is the card itself. The front side bus on the card was only 25 megahertz, unless you wanted to modify and move some jumpers around and things like that. But the base card, what you could do with that 25 megahertz front side bus is you could get an Intel SX250 that clock doubled that CPU into something a little more respectable. And you could run some slightly newer games at slightly faster frame rates, and all was good in the world. But still no sound, still no PC sound or anything like that. And in those days, yes, this device does support game port. So you could hook up like an MT32 or something like that, but those were still crazy expensive in those days. That would have been another $400 on your project. And if you're going to do that, MT32 was kind of exiting maybe in terms of popularity as like Sound Blaster and AdLib cards and wavetable synthesis and stuff like that was kind of ramping up in popularity, especially for developers. So, but what Apple did to kind of correct that is the revision card what they are now calling the PC compatible card, not just DOS compatible card, the PC compatible card, did something that the original card did not, which was the other card has like a subset of an ISA bus, just a little header on the board that was like for future upgradability. But Apple didn't do anything with that. So what they did is on this revision of the card, which is compatible with Power Macintosh machines, they added a Sound Blaster compatible, I think it's like a Vibra chipset, so that way that you actually get Sound Blaster sound. And there are some little outputs here so you can feed it directly into your Mac, so it just comes out your Mac speakers with a pass-through for your CD audio. That made all the difference for gaming. Like, you could actually play games with AdLib and Sound Blaster compatible sound now. So fun stuff became funner. Now, what does that leave us for a CPU, though? Well, the base CPU on these, Apple sort of advertised it as a DX266. So a 66 megahertz Intel CPU. Well, as time went on, my understanding is Apple used both Intel and then later in the game to save money, Cyrix, which was a competing x86 compatible processor, that they could save a little bit of money per card, per DOS compatible machine by using a Cyrix CPU instead of using the Intel CPU. So this unit here actually has the Cyrix CPU, and it's okay, but it's not as fast as a real Intel 486. It is not the same speed, clock for clock, as a DX266 Intel chip. So what I'm going to do today is we're going to go ahead and we're going to do some quick benchmarking, so that way that we can see exactly what we start with. And then we can go ahead and replace the CPU, because this is just a socket, what Intel called like socket 3. We can replace this with a new Intel DX266, and then do some benchmarking to see what the difference is. I'm not going to say that it's going to be like night and day, but it's enough that if you were using it in the machine, you'll be able to, oh yeah, I can tell there's a difference. So to make sure that everybody knows what our test rig is, the machine here is a PowerMax 6160 running 761, and it has 64 megabytes of RAM. Now, one thing you want to make sure that you absolutely do, RAM is so cheap these days, make sure that you actually have a RAM sim installed on your DOS card, because you instantly get a 25 to 35% speed boost by adding RAM. Now, a Power Mac might be able to take EDO memory. This is all engineered around 486 standards, so you will need to absolutely make sure that you use fast page mode RAM. As far as I know, you'll have to use fast page mode RAM in this card. I've tested several different EDO sims, but I could not get them in any of them to work. But tried and true 16 megabyte fast page mode 72 pin sim. I think this is 70 or 80 nanosecond or something. It just worked the first time with no trouble. So the other thing in our test rig to kind of make things a little bit faster, I am using a SCSI to SD. This is the version 6, the 2020C model. So this should be, as of the recording of this video, be the newest version of this card. And past that, it's pretty much stock. I did, as discussed kind of in another video, I did go ahead and add a, let me see if I can pull this out of here, a 40 millimeter, gosh, it is stuck. I'm trying not to break anything. I did add a 40 millimeter server fan here. It's like, I don't know, it's like 56 or 5700 RPM. So it will make a little bit of noise while you're using this, but this is probably a smart bet because this CPU, or I'm sorry, this fan is set to where it will evacuate heat off the motherboard through the 6100 fan and exhaust it out the top. Well, through engineering geniusry, the way this card actually lines up is the CPU on the 486 sits directly above the 6100 CPU. So putting those two right on top of another, I don't know. I don't want to cook anything. And these server fans are like $5 on eBay. So it was worth the purchase just for peace of mind, if nothing else. And a 6100 gets pretty darn hot even without a card sitting on top of it, even without a second 5-volt processor sitting on top of it. So maybe it just makes good sense in 2020 to go ahead and put a little bit of active cooling on all this. So anyway, let's go ahead, let's do some benchmarking on this card, and then let's meet back here and let's do the upgrade. gosh, that guy could just go on and on. Anyway, what we're going to go ahead and do is we're going to go ahead and pull the heatsink off, take a look at that Cyrix CPU, and then go ahead and install the Intel 486DX266 that I picked up off eBay, and we'll do some testing with that. Now, the first step you're going to want to do, go ahead and remove the 72-pin SIM so you've got full easy access to the socket. And these cards, or I'm sorry, the heatsink is held on, at least on this model, with 4 little tabs. So we're going to pop those tabs. We're going to pull the heatsink off. We'll take a look. I'll clean up, and then we'll take a look at that Cyrix CPU. And then we'll go ahead and we'll remove it from the socket using a little bit of mechanical persuasion. And then we'll go ahead and install the Intel CPU. We'll put some new heatsink compound on, return the heatsink, and then pop it back in and do some additional testing. All right, so from memory, this little CPU here, these tabs just stick down. They kind of clip under the edge. Oh, sorry, you can't really see that, can you? They clip down underneath this edge between the ceramic of the CPU and the plastic of the socket. So they just clip on underneath that. And all you have to do to get that up out of there is there are some little ears on the side. You just go with your screwdriver and just kind of turn it a tiny bit. And what that'll do is it'll pop that ear out, and then you can move on to the next one. You can probably get away with doing it like clockwise. I'm probably going to suggest doing it where you kind of do opposite sides, so that way that you're not putting any kind of additional stress on this connector, or I'm sorry, on this little bracket, because we're going to use it again here in just a second. And I sure don't want to bend anything out of space or out of whack. So, all right. So there's the retaining clip for the heatsink. Let's pull that off, and we can go ahead and we can. Let's see. This may also require just the most tiniest bit of mechanical persuasion to get this moving. Let me see if I have a small flat blade available. And of course, it's always good to start projects when you have all the tools you need with you, but it does not appear that I have what I need. So I might just be too ginger with this. I'm going to go ahead and just give it a little turn. Yeah, and the heatsink is kind of giving or the heatsink compound's kind of giving up the ghost on this, so I can pull that off of there. You definitely want to make sure on any of these upgrades that you, not as important on the old CPU, but definitely pretty important on the heatsink. You make sure you want to clean all of that off before you apply new thermal compound, before you reinstall it. There are lots of different options. I know that the people that make Arctic Silver, they have like a 2-part cleaner kit for heat sinks. That basically it's like a 1 and a 2. The first part is the thermal material remover. This is, from memory, one of these. Let me see. Oh yeah, this is the one. This basically in here, I can't swear to it because they don't have a list of the ingredients. I could swear that this is like Goo Gone because it smells, it's got that citrusy sort of smell. And then this is a thermal surface purifier, whatever that means. And this doesn't smell like really much of anything. It smells kind of like the other product, but maybe just fainter. And I'm thinking that this is just some sort of like alcohol-based sort of solution, because you do have to keep the lids on these pretty tight, or otherwise they will evaporate. But you can use a solution like this, or if you are one of those lucky people that has a CVS or some other manner of big box pharmacy nearby and you can find it, alcohol probably will get you where you want to go to. There are other options if you got to go nuclear, but I would say the gentlest solutions are sometimes the best. All right, so let's go ahead and let's take a look at the Cyrix CPU that's in here, and really just a drop or two of the, a drop or 3 maybe, of the thermal compound remover first, and then we will take a look at this CPU. We'll clean up the heatsink, and then we will get that new CPU installed. So this stuff's pretty great. I mean, it just absolutely cuts through, I mean, all the old compound that's been on there for like 1,000 years. I know that I've read online from some people that say that that their CPU heatsinks were kind of glued on. I don't know that necessarily they were glued in place. It's more likely that they just, with time, have just become permanently affixed to the CPU. These Cyrix CPUs on eBay, a couple more drops there. These Cyrix CPUs on eBay are pretty darn cheap. Like, I mean, you could probably pick one of these up because they don't have a lot of gold reclaim value, and that's kind of what you're going to fight on upgrade CPUs. It's just people that think they have a gold mine on their hands because they've got something that's got gold pins on the bottom. But these, a little bit of the purifier. I don't necessarily know that this does anything for a ceramic CPU, but hey, we're going to use both steps here. So, oh man, that looks pretty nice. So, okay, so there is our unmasked Cyrix DX266 CPU, and we can go ahead and we can remove that from the socket, probably the exact same way. I'm just using like a flat blade screwdriver that probably has seen better days. It's got like some plasti dip on it, but what we're going to do is there is enough of a little gap there that you can get between the CPU and the socket. And what I'm going to do is just very gently, I'm going to work around the edge of the CPU, because this is not a zip socket. This is it's not zero insertion force. This is a lot of insertion force socket. But it's like most things. Just go slow and take your time. And if you think you're breaking something, it's probably because you are. So, all right. So there's our Cyrix CPU. And just to make sure that everybody sees, the key pin, and then all right. So anyway, the key pin on these CPUs down here in the corner, the silk screen of the Apple board or of the PC compatible board also has a matching notch to let you know that that's the orientation you're going to want to use for the CPU. So let's set that aside. Or actually, no, if you really want to see this guy up close and personal, the part number from Cyrix is CX46DX266GP. I don't know what GP specifically stands for in this, but I'm sure if you went out to CPU World, you could look this CPU up and it will tell you everything you ever wanted to know about it. On the back, the manufacture date says 2003 Cyrix USA, and then there's a probably a batch number or something like that. If you were so inclined, you wanted to look that up, I'll pause, and there's the information. All right, so let's go ahead, and what we're going to do is I'm going to set this aside. Let's go ahead and let's clean up our heatsink, and then we'll move on to that next step. I just love tearing up paper towels. Let's get our thermal compound remover. Gosh, in this video, I'm seeing how nappy my desk works. You can tell where I've cut up all kinds of plastic over the years, and styrofoam, and all kinds of stuff for different projects. It's I love crafts. I love working on little projects like that. So yeah, this has always been my desk for doing those things. So, all right. So there's our. We might give that one more drop of the thermal material remover. Okay, looks pretty good. We'll use the thermal surface purifier. This is not a sponsored video. This is just what I've got laying around. And it's not that there are not better products. It's not that there are not better solutions. It's just what I've got on hand, based on things people have given me or things that I have just bought to try. So don't think that I am telling you that your favorite brand of some product is not the best. I know people very much chase that the best sort of idea. So, okay. All right, so we have our heatsink all cleaned up. That looks good. Let's go ahead and let's get our CPU, which I ordered from not the Russian Federation, so it is probably an actual real CPU and not like a Oreo that has been painted to look like a CPU. Sorry, Russian Federation, but if all the fake chips didn't come from you and from China, then people wouldn't make those type of broad sweeping statements. Okay, so a little bit more. We're going to put some compound remover on the CPU itself just to make sure that we're starting out with a good clean surface, and that when we rub this, that the words don't come off the CPU, letting us know that it is a fake or like a rebadged sort of CPU. And I did pick up some residue off of there. This chip that I'm going to use, this is a Intel 486 DX266. This is a 5-volt CPU, just like the Cyrix CPU is. You can see there's the key pin down in the corner. And if you are very interested, if you're interested in what it says on the back, it was manufactured in, it says Intel copyright 1989, 1992, to give you an idea of how kind of out of date the PC compatibility cards were when they were already being produced. And made in Malaysia. You know, Doc, they make all the best stuff in Malaysia. Okay, so what we're going to do, I've got that off of there. Let's get this a little, got some more paper towel here that I'm going to tear up. Let's go ahead and let's get this dried off. All right, so now what we're going to go ahead and do is we're going to put our CPU back in place, and then we are going to go ahead and put on some new thermal compound. We're going to go ahead and put our heatsink back on. We're going to go ahead and put our clip back in place. We'll return this to the Power Mac, and we'll do some additional testing. Now, it's always good when you're starting any of these projects to, you don't want to start yourself off on a bad foot. So make sure that all of your pins are as straight as you can make them before you start trying to install the CPU. These are made out of gold. They are very soft. So if you start going crazy and bend a pin, it is very possible that you could actually break that pin off, and then you're going to have a bad day. So let's go ahead, and I have a little card here that came with some thermal compound that I bought that is a nice straight edge, and will probably help us make sure that all of our pins are in alignment. So I'm going to go ahead and just run this through, and anywhere that I see that we might have a problem, maybe try to straighten those up a little bit. Turn. This fumbling sound that you're hearing is just me being Ron, not necessarily an issue with this chip. So, all right. So looking at the CPU, things look mostly kind of okay. Maybe I'm gonna try to straighten up just a few of these by hand. And again, they are so soft. They're made out of gold. So whatever you do, don't drop the CPU. Do not make yourself more work. Alright, so that looks pretty darn good. It's pretty straight. So, but really, if we're going to do this, let's take one shot at this rather than accidentally break something. So, okay, so we're going to check. We're going to make sure we get our key correct. And actually, for the record, this is socket 3, but this is a 168-pin socket. Or I'm sorry, 169-pin socket. So there are other options for upgrade chips, but we're going to go with the DX266 since that is kind of a popular chip that's in the same kind of family. So let's line it up. I'm going to go ahead, we just push a little bit here and there to make sure that things are kind of aligned. I'm going to work from the corners. Again, there is a little bit of insertion. Whoops. Now that's bad. It popped up on that side. I want to kind of start over. I do not want to have everything aligned and pushed down on one side, and then we've got another side that's like popping up, and I'm going to like have pins that are like going wonko. So, all right. So I pulled it back out, made sure that everything's okay. Line everything back up. It only goes one way based on our key pin. I'm going to push a little bit on one corner, push a little bit on the other corner, push back on the other corner, push back on the corner, find a new corner. Make sure I don't get a human hair in there. And I think that's it. I think we have it in there. Hopefully autofocus didn't get too crazy there. But I'm going to look around the edge of the CPU. I don't see any gold legs sticking out where something went super wrong. So that's our CPU. All right, so let's go ahead. And we're going to go ahead and add some thermal compound. This right here is not an endorsement. This is some Corsair XT M50. They call this like a high performance thermal compound, but I mean, that's mostly for like modern stuff. I mean, probably like some ceramic or I don't know if it's pronounced French, but there's lots of stuff on the market that'll probably work really well. Remember, if you use anything like Arctic silver or something, this does contain like little pieces of metal. So it is electrically conductive, some of those products. So just be careful. So what we're going to do is we're going to just deposit a kind of a pea-sized blob there in the middle of our CPU. And I am not, there are people that are spreaders and flickers and all that type of stuff. I'm just going to get it kind of right there in the middle. I'm going to back my syringe up and then put the cap back on, so that way that it does not keep pushing stuff out the end. So I have, this is kind of a viscous, you also make sure it's kind of viscous because you don't want it squirting out the edge and getting all over your motherboard and potentially causing you some grief there. I'm going to go ahead and I've got like a pea-sized blob right there in the middle of the CPU, which is about kind of what Apple would have applied and then just let it spread out. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and put the heatsink back in place. I'm going to give it a little wiggle and push it down. And what that should do, I don't want to introduce any air pockets, so I'm not going to pull it back up. I'm just going to trust that I don't see any squirting out the sides. So we've probably got a good quarter-size blob as soon as that expands out right there in the middle of our CPU. So now let's go ahead and let's pop our bracket back on. And the easiest way to probably do that is to hold on to the middle, get one side clipped and started, go to the other side and clip and start that one, okay? Then go to the outside, the opposite outside edges and do those. And if you feel like you're going to break something, remember, it may be because you're breaking something. So go slow. Go slow, dang it. Take your time. This is not a race. The only person that you're racing in life is yourself. So let's go ahead and we'll check, and that looks really good around the outside edge. All of our clips are on there. I do see a tiny bit of thermal compound coming out the top, but whoops, let me make sure that's in frame. I see a tiny bit that's coming out the top here, but I kind of saw that on the original, so I'm not going to worry about that too terribly much. Okay, make sure I got it all in place. Everything looks good. Seems to be nice and secure. Great. All right, I think we are ready to go ahead and reinstall the chip and do some troubleshooting. Oh, well, let's do some troubleshooting if there's a problem, but let's do some benchmarking. Okay, so we did some fun testing with the DX266, and as you saw, it's like just like that much faster than a Cyrix chip. But you know what's even faster than that? A overdrive processor, or a AMD K5 133. Wait a minute, Ron. Aren't those 3.3 or like 3.42 or 3.2 or something volt processors? And yes, they are. However, there was a couple of companies that made accelerators for older slot 3 motherboards that only supported 5 volt. And this is one of them. These are kind of tough to find these days. So I really had to search around on eBay for quite a while to find one at a reasonable price. Because I will tell you what, man, the people with the Intel DX4100 chips, they must think that they are just worth $1 million, because you cannot get one for like under $100. However, you can sometimes pick up these AMD DX5 133s on this adapter plane that has voltage regulators that drops the 5 volts of the slot 3 down to an acceptable level for the CPU. You can sometimes pick them up for $50. So I was able to get this pretty inexpensively. And I thought, heck, if we're going to break some stuff, let's really break some stuff. But wait, Ron, isn't there going to be a clearance problem because the 486 CPU sits directly over the the PowerPC chip? Probably. But you know what? I think at this point, I'm ready to do some real testing, because there's probably somebody out there that's hanging on to some of this stuff and is just curious if it'll work. So let's do it. Now, one thing that is different about these CPUs, because this is, you can see the actual chip in there, and then it's kind of mounted to a board. It's a surface mount chip. It's got this heatsink stuck to it. This socket here has the capacitors and stuff underneath, and some dip settings for controlling kind of how it interacts with your machine. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to look these dip settings up real fast, and I'll put a link to it in the description. And let me make sure this is all correct, and then let's swap it out. Okay, I verified online. This is the, for an exact sort of name of a product, is a TrinityWorks version E. These were, it's a 5x86. This is, was made in like 1997. So, okay, let's go ahead and let's remove the DX266, and then we'll try. So, all right, I've just got it slid underneath there. Again, working so slow, so baby fine, not wanting to break anything. Again, somewhere I have the proper tool for this, but I sure can't find it right now. So I just went ahead and extracted it with the sort of the chip holder in place. So I'm going to set this aside. Find a nice static bag for this to live in temporarily. Okay. Let's go ahead and let's install our upgrade processor now. As I was talking about the other day, this socket is a socket 169. So it has a key pin for overdrive chips, overdrive processors, right here. If your board doesn't have one of these, at your own risk, you can clip that chip off, or clip that pin off the chip, because that is simply a key. That just says, hey, this only goes in the socket one direction, so don't try to put me in another way, or otherwise I'll just bend over. So I'm going to go ahead and, again, with all this old technology, it's a little scary doing stuff, so work slow, be deliberate in your actions. A lot of these are looking for ZIF sockets. So a ZIF socket would make this easy peasy inserting. A regular old lots of force socket, not so much. But yeah, I absolutely do not want to break anything. So I am just working slow and working deliberate. And that to me looks as if it is in the socket. Now on these, the recommendation you're going to see from manufacturer is that you have some sort of active cooling. And as a reminder, I do have a 40 millimeter server cooler installed on the 601 chip, so hopefully that will be enough to get it a little bit of cooling down there, or keep it cool enough where we don't have an issue. I am having a problem getting this in the socket here. I guess we're lined up. Yeah. Okay. So I was just being a little overly cautious. Okay. So I'm checking it again. It looks like we're in there. Okay. Moment of truth. Let's go ahead and install the card. I don't want to alarm anybody, but the heat sinks are touching and the card is actually kind of at an angle. So I don't know where we're going to get with this, but let's give it a try. Okay, moment of truth. Contact. Alright, we got Mac icons. I guess that's good. Touching the back side of the card, I don't feel anything running too hot just yet. One thing you definitely don't want to do is you don't want to put too much pressure down on the 601 chip, because that will, that will end your Power Mac 6100 pretty quick. Alright, well, I've had this issue with this machine where the stuff will be grayed out. Okay, it says it's booting. Oh, it's up. Well, that's good. Wouldn't boot if it didn't have a valid CPU in there. Alright. Appears to be locked up here. So it may not like EMS memory. So let's restart. Sometimes it just acts wonky, even with like the original CPU in there. So let's just go extended memory. Okay, that launched. Okay, we'll run DOS bench. Well, I guess if I can type DOScember. Who is this? Jar Jar? There we go. Alright. We'll see what we got. Well, what did we learn? Well, I think we learned that the DOS card was really sold as a device for people that were wanting to maybe, you know, run Windows apps and things like that, run productivity software, and that's absolutely how Apple marketed the darn thing. Um, the original Houdini 1 included the 46 SX25, and that's pretty anemic for doing anything, even Windows 3.1 type of stuff, especially if you had a shared RAM situation. But the DX266, or the Cyrix model that they shipped, was nothing to sneeze at. It was a pretty major performance increase. But, honestly, it's, the thing that's holding this device back is the video chipset, it just seems like. And I think the benchmarking kind of shows that, where even though you're making these big leaps in terms of CPU power, like going up to that AMD K5 133, you just don't see any real performance difference in games and stuff. So, if your plan is like, hey, it'd be really cool to be able to play those old LucasArts games, or play Commander Keen, or play Jill of the Jungle, or something like that, on my Macintosh with a pretty simple upgrade card, then yeah, you can do that. But for like, hey, I want to play Duke Nukem or something like that, or Quake, as you saw, you're not going to get very far. So that's a real shame, but Apple did release some Pentium-based cards later for the PCI Power Max, and I think maybe there was even some bus-based versions for some of the later, or some of those PowerPC machines. But those cards were better performers, because they include like S3 Verge chipset and things like that, and like no 3D stuff, no real 3D chipset. But it would probably play DOS games okay. But anyway, that's kind of the wrap up on this. I want to thank everybody, especially the people that put together DOScember. I know that Clint from LGR, I think, was maybe the person that kind of coined the term years ago. But hey, I'll probably have some other cool cards cool videos related to the Houdini 2, like the Apple DOS compatibility card. Maybe in the next month or so. I'd really like to maybe try to get MIDI working on this. That's something that people have not really done much with. And as you saw, I made a custom boot menu, and I'll probably put a link to that down in the doobly-doo. So if anybody has one of these cards and wants to have it all tricked out, that it could maybe save them some time versus creating that all themselves. But anyway, I want to thank everybody for watching, and if we don't see each other, have a wonderful holiday, whatever it is that your family celebrates, and Apple II forever. Or, maybe think different, or potentially, I don't know, like, whatever the proper greeting is for DOScember. Anyway, have a great day.